Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoGive podcast. I'm Ben Wright, your host, and today we have on Ryan Smith from Recyclops. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
No, super excited to have you on. So I love to begin these podcasts with just letting my guests kind of introduce themselves and kind of what they're working on.
Yeah. I'm the founder and CEO of Recyclops, like you mentioned, and Recyclops is a business that is focused on sustainability, accessibility, making just giving people access to sustainability initiatives. Our big focus is recycling, although we do go a little bit beyond that. But if you look at the United States in particular, there are about 50 million households that don't have access to recycling. They don't have a recycling pickup, available to them. So there's 130 million homes in the US. So it's about, 38%. So pretty significant
Yeah.
percentage. Most of those are, split into two categories. It's either kind of the outskirts of urban centers and then getting into rural. And then the other side is apartments. So there's about 34 million in this kind of outskirts of urban centers, para-urban sector. And then there's about 16 million apartments, condos, the like, that don't have recycling pickups. And it's just that blew my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I grew up
Yeah.
recycling, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, I just kind of thought everyone had access. I just didn't realize that it was even a thing, that like recycling wasn't available, until I moved into an apartment that didn't have it. And it was like, what?
Yeah.
Did I just move into the most ghetto apartment complex? And I wasn't too far off from being the most ghetto apartment complex in town, but it wasn't unique, I learned. And as I dug deeper and deeper, I just saw that, full cities don't have recycling. And that's where I felt like, hey, this can be solved. And if not me, then who?
Yeah, no, I love it, man. And that's actually that was going to be my next question. Like, what was the moment that you kind of realized? And it's kind of cool that you had that experience yourself in terms of not having recycling. Because honestly, me being very naive, and it's great that you shared those statistics at the start of the call. I was probably the same as you. I just presumed that everybody had recycling available to them, right? Like it just seems like one of those things. I mean, we take it for granted, I suppose, right? It's just something that I put into the bin, put out on a Friday, somebody comes and collects it. So perhaps help me understand why that kind of gap exists. Like, is it resource based? Like, why is there not recycling for all? What's the kind of main reason behind that?
Yeah, so I'll really focus in on the kind of the para-urban or rural side of things and why that doesn't have recycling. When it comes to commercial, when it comes to all of it, like multifamily housing, so apartments or rural or para-urban, whatever, it's logistics. There's logistics challenges. Apartments have big spacing issues. They have challenges with keeping recycling streams clean, and there's a lot of challenges associated with that. But looking at these areas that are, the bigger portion of the population that doesn't have recycling is kind of these outskirts of urban centers and getting into rural. And it's all recycling. To kind of understand why this is happening, you have to understand kind of how recycling works as a whole. Recycling is a business that is all about economies of scale. You need, a semi truck, holds 40,000 pounds of material. That's how much you're allowed to put in there. And so what you have is, in order to ship efficiently, you would need 40,000 pounds. And so that means you need 40,000 pounds of a water bottle. Get a water bottle. There's, super thin plastic. They don't weigh hardly anything. You need 40,000 pounds of that. And 40,000 pounds of that takes literally hundreds of thousands, if not, million plus water bottles. And the only place you can get that many water bottles is in an urban center. If the urban centers have that many water bottles, and you don't just need that many water bottles, you need that many water bottles a lot of times, because you need the equipment, you need to invest in the infrastructure to sort, and to bundle this up, to bale it up, and all of that. And so, recycling works when you have an urban center and you have tons of material. And so every urban center has, multiple recycling facilities. They're called material recovery facilities, or they use the term MRF, and people call it a MRF. So every urban center has, a MRF, a couple MRFs. But even looking at like Utah, Salt Lake has a couple MRFs. Utah County, Provo, Orem, there's not a MRF. There's nothing. All the stuff from Utah County, all the recycling that gets picked up, it goes to Salt Lake.
Wow.
And that kind of highlights that, you really need, economies of scale to make this happen. Like Waste Management just built, I don't remember the exact number. It's like a 20 something $20 million facility in Salt Lake, and for recycling. And it's just all about that. The other side of this is garbage trucks. Garbage trucks are, recycling trucks. They're the same truck. They're $300,000, when you buy them new, just over that. So they're really expensive. And they're really good at what they do. They're really efficient at picking things up. What they're not built to do is be transportation vehicles. They're supposed to be pickup vehicles, right? They're meant to pick things up, be hyper efficient at that. But let's take, if we're looking at Utah, let's take Price, Utah. Price is like 2 hours from Salt Lake. Or you could do Ephraim, Utah, same thing, 2 hours from Salt Lake. If you had a garbage truck there who was going and doing pickups, let's say you get enough households to sign up to justify it, or the city mandates it and everyone signed up. Either way, you have a garbage truck that's going around picking up recycling, and then it needs to drive to Salt Lake. 2 hours to Salt Lake.
Probably 50 miles an hour as well, right? So it's not, they're not.
Oh, that's exactly. And they're getting, these trucks are getting, they get 2 to 3 miles a gallon, when they're doing pickups. Maybe highway, maybe it's getting 5.
Yeah.
And you're paying someone $20+ an hour to drive it. You're spending the tires on it every 3 months. You're spending $8,000 on tires. There's tons of hydraulics. They break down, and the last place you want to break down is, an hour from anywhere. And so there's risks associated with these long trips. But then you just look at it, the amount of time, 2 hours into Salt Lake, half an hour unloading, 2 hours back. Man, there's only 3.5 hours to do what the truck's actually meant to do.
Yeah.
And it just basically means, and garbage, it works because there's landfills everywhere. And there's transfer stations. It's a lot, it's easier to do. But recycling, all of the recycling infrastructure is in urban centers. And that basically means that that's where recycling happens. As you start to leave urban centers, recycling programs just disappear. And that is not unique to a state. It's everywhere. It's in California. It's in Oregon. It's in Washington. It's in New York. The greenest states. It's everywhere. And so it's kind of crazy.
Yes, you're blowing my mind a little bit, because again, I think it goes back to my naivety a little bit. But actually, how you've just put that into kind of figures and numbers. Yeah, I mean, why would the state provide a recycling program where, one, there's not enough need to fill up those trucks, and then, like you said, the additional cost of them having to go backwards and forwards 2-3 hours. So you've outlined, I suppose, the real problem, and it is a real problem from what you've outlined, and I imagine a pain for a lot of people. You've obviously created the solution to that problem, right? So I'd love for you just to explain the new world of recycling for those areas that don't have it.
Yeah. So as we look at our business, there's 2 underserved markets that we go after. One is what we've just been talking about. The second is based on material. And so I just want to touch on that. There's a lot of your recycling program, no matter where you live, doesn't accept all plastics.
Right. Yeah.
There's maybe 5 programs in the country that are, basically all inclusive. And so you have or you have materials like Salt Lake doesn't accept glass, Nashville doesn't have glass recycling. And so those are other challenges where you can go in and people have a need, people want to recycle this, but they don't have an ability to do it. So like, for example, we launched a glass recycling program. Salt Lake has a great glass recycling program. Momentum Recycling is awesome. But Nashville doesn't. So Recyclops launched a glass recycling program in Nashville. And so we target some of that as well. And I just wanted to mention that, but really looking at kind of, hey, how do we do it? How do we make it work where someone else doesn't? And the answer is kind of simple. We do it the same way that, hundreds of small mom and pop businesses do it around the country. What happened is I stumbled upon a little family run business in Mapleton, Utah. If you don't know where Mapleton is, it's,
I don't. My geography is awful. It's all
you're
big.
good.
Being a recent import, me, I have to use Google Maps to plot myself everywhere. So that's not.
You're good. So if you know where Provo is,
Yep.
Mapleton is just south and then up against the mountains.
Okay. I
So
can figure out. Yeah.
yep. So that's Mapleton, and Mapleton doesn't have a city-wide recycling program. But there was a family, the Merrill family, that launched a recycling program in Mapleton. They signed up their neighbors. Their neighbors would pay them $10 a month. And they drove around in a Suburban with a trailer attached, and they'd go pick up recycling. Their kids would go do it almost like a paper route. Mm-hmm. Kids would go out, pick up the recycling, throw it in the trailer, and do that. And they made it work. They didn't need, everyone in the city to sign up. They had a couple hundred customers, and it was a nice little business. And I saw that, and it's like, what? And as I started digging in, I saw that there's more and more of these. There's tons of these. People are charging their neighbors $15 a month, and they're driving around picking it up in a truck and trailer or just truck or whatever. And I saw that and thought, okay, big waste is failing and big recycling is failing, but big waste owns big recycling. Yeah. So that's failing these communities. But you have, Janet and her pickup truck who's saving the day.
Yeah.
And it's like that just highlighted to me that this can be solved, and it can be solved by people using their own vehicles to do it. And you kind of eliminate some of these problems that are created by having these big assets. You're basically trying to if you're trying to do traditional recycling programs in some of these communities, you're sticking a square peg in a round hole. It's like that works great there, but not here. Oh, right. And people have gone and made it work with just doing it themselves. And so we looked at that and said, hey, how do I scale that? How do I take what's working and how do I replicate it? And it's like, I don't want to own trucks in every market that doesn't have recycling in the country. Like, that's thousands. Like, how do you manage a fleet? How do you do that? Like, I can't do that. But what I can do is find people in the community who want to earn money on the side. I can find people in the community who want to sign up to recycle, and I can connect the dots and have an app-based solution, kind of like an Uber style solution where you have drivers who are using their own vehicles to go and do this. They're picking stuff up. In this case, it's not humans, it's recycling. Yeah. And then they're taking it to an aggregation point where we aggregate it and then get it hauled to the nearest recycling facility. And it works. And so we've been able to basically take that and replicate it. We're in 10 different states in over 100 cities. And for the most part, we've targeted places that don't have anything. But like I mentioned, we're going into places that are missing pieces to the puzzle, like Nashville. Yeah. It's like, oh, we were already operating in the outskirts of Nashville and some suburbs there that didn't have recycling, some pretty big, hundreds of thousands of cities with hundreds of thousands of people. And it's like, hey, but Nashville doesn't even have glass. We're doing glass recycling in this little community that's off, on the outskirts of Nashville. Yeah. Let's bring that into Nashville using the same thing. And we did. And so that's kind of how we work. It's not, when you think Uber, people usually think like, oh, on demand. We can do on demand. Most of what we do though is scheduled pickups.
Yep.
And
similar to how it works here, like on a Friday,
That's exactly right. Yeah. Same idea. The other key component thing to mention here is all of our recycling is put in bags. Bags, most city recycling programs, bags are a big no-no. They get caught in machinery. They cause problems. We use bags to our advantage. Bags enable the material to be self-contained so that anyone in any vehicle can pick it up. Large cardboard, it's flattened and put to the side. It's the same way. If you go to New York City, it's the same way they do recycling. It's what we modeled it after. And then the bags also help keep it cleaner, because if let's say your neighbor has a kid and the kid puts a dirty diaper, they have a toddler and the toddler, takes their little brother's dirty diaper and throws it into the recycling, and the parents don't notice, honest mistake. Yeah. That then goes into a big compaction truck and gets smashed. And suddenly you have dirty diaper getting smashed over all the recycling. Guess what? All that's trash. Yeah. But if that's in a self-contained bag, it's a lot harder for that to escape.
I get
And so
you.
it keeps recycling cleaner. You kind of prevent this idea of cross contamination. So our recycling is actually a lot cleaner than your average municipal program.
It's fascinating, and I have to admit, it really is fascinating. It was actually something, like I said, I did a bit of research into the company prior to this call, but the piece that I think I was missing is actually the drivers being like almost on demand. It's like like you said, kind of like an Uber model in terms of being able to go and collect recycling, which I think is ingenious. I think it's fantastic. One question, this might be a stupid one, recycling bins, right? So here I have a recycling bin, I can put it all in one. Do you offer something like that in terms of like having a bin, or is it very much up to the residents just to have their own kind of collection point? Or
Great question. It varies a little bit from place to place where we do recycling. In some places we have bins that we provide, and customers, put it out. In every market we say, so in some markets we provide the bin, they put bags inside the bin. We take it all mixed, just like you do with your program. Only difference is we say, hey, large cardboard that doesn't fit in the bag, put to the side. The other piece to that is, so in some markets where we don't provide bins, people just put the bags on the curb.
yeah,
And we do that. We do say, hey, if you want it in a bin, put it in a bin, just make sure it's clearly marked so that we know to pull the bags out of it. The bins are great. There's a lot of advantages. Some places, don't want to use bins. It's just one more piece of plastic that they need to buy. And so they'd say, hey, why do I need this? If you choose bags over bins, if you're doing one versus the other over the lifetime of a bin, it's using about the same. It's about 20 years. It takes 20 years of plastic bags to use as much plastic as is in a bin.
okay.
So it's about the same plastic footprint. Obviously, for you doing the bin and the bags, there's some more plastic involved, but it has its advantages. It's simple, it's clean, it looks nicer than having bags on your curb.
Yeah, it's ingenious, man. I love it. I love it. So obviously, I think most of the viewers should be aware of the fact that you had some cool news and you've just taken on a round of funding, which is big congratulations to you. And actually, here in the business model, it makes so much sense to me. What are the plans for Recyclops moving forward in terms of growth, and in terms of where you're going to take the business and what your thoughts are for the future?
Yeah, so we are growing rapidly. I mean, we're launching in 2 new markets a week right now, and we want to be, our hope is to be in every major market by the end of this year in the country. So we're just growing like wild. I'm really trying to expand our geographic footprint and amplify our impact that way. And one of the other big things we're doing is we've really gotten into this idea of kind of enterprise sales, where we're helping businesses solve some of these problems for their consumers. So you have a lot of different businesses. A great example that we work really closely with that it's kind of flagship for us is Imperfect Foods. If you're unfamiliar with Imperfect Foods, they take landfill bound food. Often it's ugly
kind of process, right?
Yeah.
Upcycling food. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm a big fan of that as well.
It's awesome. I mean, it's crazy. You have like an ugly carrot and the grocery store doesn't want it, so it goes to the landfill, and it's like, oh, what? So they take those and they have a program for those, and it's not just ugly fruit. It's sometimes it's surplus and different things like that. So they have a subscription box that you get, but in this box is they have this basically bubble wrap bag that's like it's an insulated liner. It looks like a little cooler bag, has the silver on it, and that helps keep the food cold and protected. And that's great, except for it basically isn't recyclable in any recycling program in the country. Maybe just a couple of them. And so they're this company that's all about keeping things out of the landfill. And then they're sending you something that is going to go in the landfill. And not only is it going to go in the landfill, it's going to stay there forever. And so they said, hey, we got to solve this. And so we partnered with them where we've partnered with them in collecting those, where those are now getting picked up by the same driver that's actually delivering the food. They're picking those up and then bringing them to centralized hubs that are either their distribution centers or hubs that we've created with them. in different spots in the country, where we aggregate those and then go get them recycled. And so we're now, helping an enterprise customer, like,
Yeah.
we're helping them do that in 40 states.
Incredible.
And doing that. And so that we want to really start pursuing more and more of that. We've been doing a pilot with there's a compostable diaper company we've been doing a pilot with, where we're actually picking up compostable dirty diapers,
Right.
and then they get sent to a specialized facility that composts them. So just kind of crazy stuff. And so we're pursuing a lot more of that, and then just grow, trying to increase access, get more and more people access to basic recycling, and then have these additional kind of add-ons, all just leveraging the same, gig economy, peer-to-peer workforce to enable this with the app.
I love it, man. I love it. It makes so much sense. So Ryan, obviously we've kind of dug into the business, and actually inherently your business is fantastic from a social impact, sustainability perspective. The question I ask everyone is like, how do you encourage that at your company? I know your business is inherently focused on social impact, and obviously recycling being a part of that. But in terms of Recyclops' kind of company culture, what other things do you do internally to really promote that message and to make it inherent to who you are as a company?
Yeah, we've thought a lot about this particularly. One thing that I mention is that I feel really strongly that businesses don't just have the ability to have a positive impact in the world, that they have almost, I think that we have a mandate as a founder of a business to do good in the world, to have a positive impact. And I love that that's built into my business, that recycling is inherently good and that we can do that. But as we look at this, I would say there's two of our core values that really touch on how we look at this from a culture perspective. One is environmental consciousness, and that is that we look at everything we do and we look at the environmental impact. Like when we decided that, hey, we're going to use plastic bags to pick up recycling, it wasn't a flippant decision. It was something that we spent a lot of time analyzing and really looking at the impact. And at the end of looking and saying, hey, what if we use reusable bags? What's the impact of that? How do you wash that? How do you transport that? And we looked at the overall impact. In the end, we feel confident that we, went with the lowest impact, which lowest negative impact, highest positive impact option. And so that's a big piece where we look at everything we do through that environmental lens and make decisions based on that. Even looking at like, hey, are we going to have, how are we going to work in this world? Are we going to have a remote workforce, or are we going to have an office? And we decided, hey, let's work remote. That's going to have a lower environmental impact. People aren't going to have to commute. We don't need to have another office that we have to, that's, contributing to, that has its own carbon footprint. Let's stick at homes. Let's do that. And then the other big piece of this is one of our core values. And this was actually one of our employees. This wasn't an original kind of value of ours, and one of our employees recommended it. And I love it. Is this idea of community. That one of our values is community. And that is that environmental issues are, they're a community, and recycling, it's a community effort. It isn't an individual effort. The impact happens on a community basis. And, things that we can do with this are going, and it's more than just like, oh, we're going to make recycling happen. We've been involved in roadside cleanup projects. We did a beach cleanup. We don't even operate in Miami, but we helped sponsor, and we're involved in a beachside cleanup program in Miami. One of our employees lives there, and they said, hey, there's a big need for this after spring break. And we said, we want to be involved.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And just looking at, kind of being a part of the solution beyond just our core business, and letting our employees, be a part of that, and rallying our customers to be a part of that, those solutions has been a great thing.
I love it, man. No, it makes total sense. And actually, the point you made was a really interesting one. I suppose as a follow-up question, I think you said that business owners, you have a mandate, right, to have a positive impact on the world. So one of the things I always ask is, if you could say anything to businesses that don't have either impact on their communities or social impact built into their business. What, in your opinion, is the benefit of that, and why should they be doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a powerful customer retention tool. Looking at, looking at, business metrics, it is a incredibly powerful retention tool. And with that, if you're not doing it and your competition is, then they are getting that powerful retention tool, and you are losing customers.
Yeah.
And the other side of this is you want a world to do business in, right? As we take care of the people here, looking at a social impact from a human perspective, as we take care of the earth, looking at it from an environmental perspective, it creates an environment for your business, to last. But if the human condition, worsens, if the environmental condition, worsens, it's harder to do business, and that's not good for anyone. And so, looking at, kind of with great power comes great responsibility. You have a lot of power, and you can use that power to do good in the world, which in turn is good for you. It's good for everyone involved.
No, I appreciate it, man. Well, Ryan, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, even from my own selfish perspective, it's been fascinating kind of getting a glimpse into the business you've built. And I mean, kudos to you, because I think it's a fantastic business from a pain point perspective. But secondly, the amount of good you're going to be doing in the process is pretty fantastic as well. So operating on both those sides, I think, it's been really enjoyable for me. Just a quick one before we kind of leave today, anywhere people can go to kind of check out what you guys are doing, and maybe there's people that want to work at Recyclops now, right? After this podcast. So where can people go to kind of check you guys out?
Yeah. Recyclops.com, RECYCLOPS.com. If you're looking for a job, /careers. And we're constantly hiring. We're always looking for new drivers in markets. So if you want to, drive, get some side hustle, our drivers make, on average $25 an hour. You're using your own vehicle, so you're netting like 18 to 20. So good money. It's hard work, but it's good money. And but yeah, we're hiring a bunch of engineers right now and doing that. Or if you want to recycle, if you're in a community that doesn't have recycling, you can request recycling for your area, and we'll pursue that. If you're in a community that does have recycling, maybe you're in an apartment, you can request recycling there. Or if you're in an area that we're already in, sign up. So
cool. All right, man. Well, this has been fantastic, Ryan. Thanks so much for the time today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, bye-bye.